we're back at Zoholics in Austin, Texas. 6.5 on the road, sort of on the road, maybe just down the road. We're calling it 6.5 on the road. And we're joined with just the best people to analyze why this company matters and what questions we might still have. Right, Lisa?
We have a couple of our own here. We've got Robert Kramer, the Vice President and Principal Analyst at Moor Insights and Strategy. Keith Kirkpatrick also joins us, Research Director from Futurum Group.
The pride of Long Island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The pride of Long Island and musician, I know.
That's what they say.
Excellent. So, guys, last day and a half or so, I when I flew out here, I was sitting next to one of the analysts from the cohort here, who said, "This is a very different conference." I said, "Tell me how much," because you're gonna hear a lot about culture and philosophy from the CEO rather than.
Oh, she gave you that?
Technology. She did, and that is exactly what started to come to fruition from 8 o'clock this morning on. Robert, starting with you, and then Keith to you. What's your take on Zoho from an enterprise perspective, from the SMB all the way up to the enterprise perspective, and how it's been evolving?
Well, it's a great question because before Zoho coming out here, I really didn't know a tremendous amount about them. Just like you said, you know, we're used to Salesforce, we're used to some of the other applications, Microsoft Dynamics. We're also used to these big enterprise applications, SAP and Microsoft and all the other ones. So I was really pleasantly surprised. They have a cult following. They have great application within the Zoho program, with the platform that they have, and it's a great team that's running it. So I was intrigued, to say the least.
Keith, what about you?
Sure. Well, I had actually been at Zoho Day earlier in the year, and the interesting thing was they took us down to McAllen, Texas, and
Where's that?
It's about I don't know. Texas is huge. It's way far south
It's an hour
of
from
here.
here.
What's that?
Everything in Texas is supposedly an hour apart.
Yeah.
By plane.
Yes, that too.
But the interesting thing about McAllen, Texas, this is where Zoho has set up an office. And instead of going to, say, Silicon Valley or going to New York or Chicago or name any big metropolitan city, they've actually gone out and chosen these areas where they have a very low cost of living. So when they can hire people there, they can actually do things like afford a house, afford a relatively new car. And the idea is that there's so much untapped talent that is out there that other companies are kind of avoiding. They're trying to tap into that and make it so if they are successful at selling their software.
You know what reminds me of? It just hit me. The late Tony Hsu, who ran Zappos, who started Zappos.
Yes.
And Tony would talk a lot about happiness, about the happiness of his employees.
Yep.
Yes.
Good point.
And I think that Zoho seems to be similarly inspired, not just wanting to find cheaper engineers,
Right,
but also wanting their employees to be happy employees,
Right.
and have all of the things in their lives that make them happy employees, which will let them sell better and make better products and be better customer service people or whatever.
I saw some tweets about that. I still refuse to call it X and posts. But that Sridhar Venmu, their CEO, tweeted about recently about morale, employee experience, not being pro micromanaging. And then when I saw him on stage this morning, really kind of articulating the same value prop, I was impressed, because it's just not typically what we see from CEOs on main stages, and we all get the chance to see them often.
Right. He wants to empower his team.
Yes, that's a great
And I think when you do that, you get results like you were saying. And where they landed with their enterprise, where they built it an hour from here, I think that's a smart decision, because if you go to these big cities like San Francisco or New York, the talent structure there is open. It's hard to find people and good people to do what you need done. So he's got a great mission and vision for how he wants to grow the company.
Well, that's the old joke in New York is, in banking or in Silicon Valley in technology, your assets go up and down the elevator every day. Like that's your corporate assets.
Yep.
Now technology's got a different feel to it right now with so many layoffs in the last couple of years. But these guys also boast that they've never ever had layoffs.
Right. Well, that's that's really admirable.
In decades.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I
20
think
years.
if you think, though, also, they take a very strong interest. They have a program where they will go into an area and they will set up a school for people to come and learn how to code. It doesn't cost them anything. Mm-hmm. And at the end, they don't have to go work for Zoho. They can go wherever. But they believe so strongly that they're doing something for these people to help them that the amount of loyalty is really, really amazing. And if you think about the tech industry and like you said, layoffs are common, they are just, doing the right thing in terms of generating a loyal workforce, and in turn, they're being loyal back and not cutting back people when, things might get a little tough.
With all the organizations the two of you have covered for so long,
Sure.
how unique is that?
I think it's extremely unique to train your people that can come to a class to learn and then to actually give them a job. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple companies do that, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
So
That scale.
to that scale, this is a large company.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, and of course, Sridhar mentioned this today, they're privately held. They're not held to the same standard as a publicly traded company who is operating from quarter to quarter, where it's almost like, hey, our number
13 weeks to hit a number. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think they have that advantage.
So let's talk about the comps. You guys both cover a lot of companies.
Yeah.
When you look at Zoho, what is the best comp? What are the other ones you got to? By the way, I know we're at an acronym limit, but comparison is what I mean by comp. And what companies might you compare it to?
Well,
Or are they selling against?
Well, they're selling against companies like, enterprise level, like to do like an ERP, which is enterprise resource planning.
Thank you.
They're going against like a NetSuite or like a lower end, like SAP as like a business one application or like a Sage. But then they have their CRM, which goes against like a Salesforce.
Salesforce, HubSpot.
Yep,
Yeah.
all those. But
Maybe more HubSpot than Salesforce because there's more focus on small and medium-sized businesses.
Correct.
Which otherwise we call SMBs, but I'm not going to do that because I'm a better person.
And you
Stay away
reached
from
your
that.
acronym limit of 6.
Yes.
Yep.
There's a fine for the next one.
Yep. But they're trying to control the data for these companies, the SMBs, the small businesses. And I think that's a great focus. But we were talking before, Keith and I, that these companies get a chance to come into the Zoho family because of the initiative, the cost is low. And it's very appealing. So then when you can...
Do you have any sense of that? Specifically, like how much cheaper? Because we did talk to a few customers, and they both indicated that the cost of the business, the cost of software is a little bit better. That wasn't why they chose it, but the cost was better. And I couldn't get a sense of how much cheaper.
It's significant. I don't want to get into exact numbers because obviously that varies on what they have. But if you think of it is not only just the monthly SaaS license cost, but you think of what, let's say you're a customer and you go to implement a large CRM that we all know that has a very very well-known name. Not only
You can say Salesforce.
and I'll say Salesforce.
All right, yeah. You already said CRM, which is a tactical, which is an
It's
acronym.
an acronym.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to pay the fine.
Okay.
So,
It's a big fine.
but if you were to pay those, monthly license fees plus what it costs you to pay a consultant to come in and
set it
customize
up,
it
right.
Yeah.
for you, and we all know that can be something that's not something that happens in like a week. You're talking, you're going to see them there every day for several quarters, if not more.
Yeah.
I do think, and you probably know this better, but at least looking at the numbers, like in my model, like service revenues for Salesforce are a very, very small percentage of software revenues. And going back, comparing it to the Oracle's or Siebel software of your SAP, this software clearly works. It's not as difficult to install as a lot of software used to be. But you're right.
Absolutely. But
It's a different number.
Salesforce doesn't necessarily make the service revenue. It's the independent consultants that really generate that, those billings. But I think the interesting thing about Zoho is if you're a smaller company, an SMB or even a mid-market company, you're going to be able to go in and say, I would like, to check out their CRM, and maybe it works for you. And if it does, then Zoho can turn around and say, guess what? We have 54 other applications covering a number of different functions that are all based on that same platform. So it'll be very easy for them to quickly migrate and utilize and get all that functionality. And that's a real, that's one of their real value propositions.
Stickiness, I was going to say
Yes.
stickiness. But last question for you guys. On the value prop perspective, it's so unique. We've talked about that. Does it need to change as they go up market from the SMB to the enterprise?
Yeah,
Or
or-
can it be maintained as it is now?
No, it has
Or
to be.
what do they have to change?
Yeah, they have to have more robust features, as these companies expand. So depending what the industry they're in. So manufacturing, bill of material, healthcare, regulations, retail, point of sale features. They may or may not have that right now.
Finance regulations.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that they're going to need to go up that chain. But the one thing that if it's a small business and they want some features to run everything within their actual industry, this is a more of a plug and play. that they don't need the complications with these larger ERP systems and such.
Well, I would say if you are looking at, I'm sorry, got me off talking about Salesforce. Zoho is...
Look, I said something nice publicly about my friend Mark Benioff, and that never happens publicly, so it's a weird day.
So Zoho, when talking about their enterprise play, they understand that they have a lot of work to do when it comes to changing how they sell, because an enterprise buyer is not the same as a mid-market buyer.
Correct.
The other thing, and of course, while Sridhar mentioned this, he said it's great that we're privately held. We're not held to the same standards. We can do what we want. It does make it that much harder to really kind of get into that enterprise market where they're going, who is Zoho? What do we know about them? They're privately held. It's a little bit harder to get visibility. So that's a challenge. And then, of course, the big thing is scalability, robustness. All of that kind of stuff is important to enterprise buyers.
Such a fascinating last 24, 36 hours. I think I would safe to say that we're all probably Zoholics fans by now. I think we need some matching merch.
I would love that.
Barbecue later.
Right.
We love that.
The hats.
And hats. Keith and Robert, thank you so much for joining Cory and me. It's been fascinating getting your perspectives on what you've observed as an organization as they're looking to really kind of go up market and the things that they need to be focusing on. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, for Lisa Martin, I'm Cory Johnson. You know who the hell Zoho is now, because we've been giving you lots of good stuff on them, and a fascinating company. We're glad to be here in Austin, Texas, for this edition of 6-5 on the Road.